The crimson sun of Zarithia IV cast long shadows across the training grounds of Fire Dragon Alliance. Krishtal watched as the light glinted off the ceremonial blades of his fellow warriors, their azure skin gleaming with sweat after hours of combat drills. At 18 years old, he stood tall among his peers, his dark blue skin with its jade undertones marking him as a pure-blooded member of the Dravoon tribe. His amber-red eyes narrowed as he completed the final sequence of the blade chant, his muscles rippling beneath tribal markings that told the story of his lineage. "Faster! Krish!" bellowed the combat instructor, a battle-scarred veteran whose left arm bore the marks of 1,000 victories. "Your enemies will not wait while you perfect your form." Krish nodded, his expression hardening as he repeated the sequence, his ceremonial dagger slicing through the humid air with renewed vigor. The blade's edge caught the light, momentarily blinding those who watched. He was the pride of his generation, destined for greatness among the warrior elite of the Dravoon tribe. As the training session ended, warriors gathered around the central fire pit, where news from the tribal scouts was shared. Krish pushed his way to the front, his height giving him advantage over many others. "The Earthers have returned," announced Elder Kraz, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. "Their metal birds have landed near the eastern ridge, where the acid rivers meet the mineral plains. They seek our precious ores and bioenergy sources." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Stories of these creatures from beyond the stars had circulated for generations, but few Zarithians had seen them up close. They were said to hide inside shells of metal and energy, too weak to breathe the rich atmosphere of Zarithia without filtration devices. "Pathetic," Krish whispered to his friend Dara Klen, who stood beside him with her ceremonial spear gripped tightly. "They come in metal shells because their flesh is too soft for real combat." "I hear they wear entire suits of something called plasma steel," Dara replied, her tone dripping with contempt. "Imagine needing such protection just to walk on foreign soil." Elder Kraz raised his hand for silence. "The Council has decreed that we must patrol our borders with increased vigilance. The Earthers must be watched, and if they encroach too far into our territories, they must be driven back or eliminated." Krish felt his pulse quicken. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, a chance to prove himself in real combat, not just training exercises. "I volunteer to lead a patrol," he declared, stepping forward before any other warrior could speak. His voice carried across the gathering, drawing all eyes to his imposing figure. Elder Kraz studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, young Tal. Select 5 warriors to accompany you. Your task is to observe the Earthers' movements and report back. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Krish bowed his head in acknowledgement, though inside he bristled at the caution. What was there to fear from these fragile aliens who couldn't even breathe Zarithian air without assistance? As the gathering dispersed, Dara approached him, her expression eager. "Count me in for your patrol, Krish. I want to see these metal-clad weaklings for myself." Krish grinned, revealing teeth that gleamed like polished obsidian. "Of course. Between us, we'll show these Earthers what true strength looks like. Not their artificial power sources, but the raw, natural might of Zarithia's children." By nightfall, Krish had assembled his team, Dara with her lightning-quick spearwork, Morvek, whose tracking skills were unmatched, the twins Larn and Sarn, masters of stealth, and Tazak, whose knowledge of eastern terrain would prove invaluable. They gathered at the edge of the camp, checking their weapons and lightweight armor made from the hardened shells of river beasts. "Remember," Krish addressed them as they prepared to depart. "These Earthers rely on technology, not skill or strength. Their metal suits and energy weapons mean nothing in the face of Zarithian cunning." His team nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with anticipation in the dying light of day. None had faced Earthers before, but all had grown up hearing tales of their strange ways and alien appearance. "We leave at first moonrise," Krish declared. "We'll approach from downwind and observe their camp before deciding our next move." As the first of Zarithia's 3 moons crested the horizon, casting a pale blue light across the landscape, the patrol set out, moving silently through the dense undergrowth of the jungle. The humid air was thick with the scent of nocturnal blossoms and the distant calls of predators seeking prey. Krish led the way, his senses alert to every sound and movement in the darkness. For 3 days, they tracked east, following the path of acid rivers that carved deep channels through the mineral-rich landscape. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous, with bubbling mud pits and geothermal vents that could scald flesh in an instant. Yet the Zarithians navigated these hazards with practiced ease, their bodies adapted to the harsh environment of their homeworld. On the 3rd night, as they crested a ridge overlooking a small valley, Morvek raised his hand for silence. In the distance, strange lights flickered through the trees, artificial, steady, unlike the bioluminescent flora of Zarithia. "The Earthers," Morvek whispered, pointing toward the lights. "They've established a temporary camp in the valley." Krish signaled for his team to spread out and approach with caution. They moved like shadows through the undergrowth, their blue skin blending perfectly with the night. As they drew closer, the sound of unfamiliar voices reached their sensitive ears, flat, monotonous compared to the melodic speech of Zarithians. From the cover of dense foliage, Krish observed the Earth camp. Temporary structures made of some reflective material had been erected in a clearing. Strange machines hummed and whirred, their purpose unknown. And there were the Earthers themselves, bipedal like Zarithians but smaller, their exposed skin pale and vulnerable-looking. Most interesting to Krish were the ones wearing what must be the famed plasma steel armor. These suits covered the Earthers from head to toe, with glowing elements at joints and along the spine. They moved with unnatural precision and occasionally emitted soft mechanical sounds as their wearers walked or bent to examine equipment. "Look how they hide inside those metal shells," Dara whispered, her voice barely audible. "They must be terribly weak beneath." Krish nodded, studying one particular armored figure who seemed to be directing the others, taller than his companions, with markings on his armor that suggested rank or status. This one moved with authority, checking various instruments and giving orders that the others hastened to obey. As they watched, this leader moved to the edge of the camp and began removing sections of his armor. First the helmet, revealing a face with features not unlike a Zarithian's, but with flat, rounded ears and skin the color of sand. Then the upper torso pieces, exposing a black, form-fitting undergarment that clung to a surprisingly muscular frame. Krish couldn't help but let out a soft, derisive laugh. "Look at that! The mighty Earthers in their impressive shells, and underneath, just soft flesh that would tear like ripe fruit under our blades." Dara smirked beside him. "Perhaps we should take one of those fancy metal suits as a trophy. Show our tribe what these invaders really are." "What use would we have for such things?" Tazak whispered from nearby. "Our strength comes from within, not from external shells." Krish was about to respond when the Earth leader suddenly stiffened, his hand moving to a device at his hip. In one fluid motion, he withdrew what could only be a weapon, sleek, angular, with a pulsing core of energy visible through transparent sections. The Earther raised the weapon and fired a burst of blinding energy into the canopy above where the Zarithians hid. The beam struck a massive branch, which exploded into fragments with a deafening crack. Krish and his team instinctively dropped lower, hearts pounding. "We have visitors," the Earther called out in accented but understandable Zarithian. "I suggest you show yourselves before my motion sensors pinpoint your exact locations." Krish felt a cold pit form in his stomach. The humans' technology had detected them despite their perfect stealth, something that had never happened before. He signaled to his team to hold position, unwilling to surrender the advantage of concealment. The human leader, whose name Patch read Nakamura, sighed audibly and fired another shot. This one deliberately aimed away from the hidden Zerithians, but close enough to shower them with splintered wood and vaporized sap. "That was a warning," Nakamura called out. "The next won't be—" Krish felt something he had rarely experienced before: uncertainty. The casual display of technological power unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He had been raised to believe that nothing could match the natural strength and skill of a Zerithian warrior. Yet this human's weapon had obliterated solid wood with barely a sound. "Fall back," he whispered to his team. "We've seen enough for now." As they retreated through the jungle, Krish's mind raced. The casual way the human had detected their presence and the destructive capability of the weapon troubled him deeply. For the first time, he wondered if the tribal elders had underestimated these visitors from Earth. Back at their temporary camp, several miles from the Earth base, the patrol gathered to discuss what they had seen. "Their technology is impressive," admitted Morvek reluctantly. "Those sensors detected us despite our concealment." "And those weapons," added Larn. "I've never seen anything that could vaporize ironbark wood so easily." Krish paced restlessly, unwilling to acknowledge the unease growing within him. "Technology is just a crutch for the weak," he insisted. "Without their machines and armor, they would be nothing against us." "Then perhaps we should separate them from their technology," suggested Dara, a predatory gleam in her eyes. "Strike when they're vulnerable. Take one of their weapons or armor pieces as proof of our superiority." Krish stopped pacing and turned to face his team. "Yes," he said slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "We'll track their movements, learn their patterns, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. Then, we'll show our tribe, and these Earthers, who truly rules Zerithia." The decision made, they settled in to rest, taking turns keeping watch. But sleep eluded Krish as images of the plasma weapon's destructive power played through his mind again and again. He told himself it was merely tactical analysis, but deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, they began tracking the human expedition as it moved through the jungle. The Earthers were conducting surveys, collecting samples, and setting up small monitoring devices at regular intervals. Krish noted with some satisfaction that despite their technology, the humans moved clumsily through the dense undergrowth, often requiring assistance from their mechanical devices to navigate terrain that any Zerithian child could cross with ease. For 3 more days, they shadowed the Earth team, learning their routines and identifying potential weaknesses. Krish observed that while all humans wore some form of protective gear, only a few, including the leader, Nakamura, wore the full plasma steel armor suits. These seemed to serve multiple functions beyond protection, enhancing strength and providing constant environmental data to their wearers. On the 4th day, an opportunity presented itself. A small group of humans, including Nakamura, separated from the main expedition to explore a narrow canyon where mineral readings were particularly high. Krish signaled to his team to prepare for an ambush at a point where the canyon narrowed further. "We take them by surprise," he instructed. "Disable their communications first, then target their weapon hands. I want at least one of them captured alive, preferably their leader." His team nodded grimly, readying their weapons and taking positions among the rocks above the canyon. As the humans approached, Krish felt his pulse quicken with anticipation. This would be his moment of triumph, proving once and for all the superiority of Zerithian warriors over Earth technology. The ambush began perfectly. Tazak and the twins dropped from above, landing behind the humans and cutting off their retreat. Morvek's precisely thrown weapon disabled the communication device on Nakamura's shoulder before any alert could be sent. Dara and Krish blocked the path forward, weapons raised. For a moment, the humans froze, clearly surprised by the sudden attack. Then, with a speed that shocked Krish, they reacted. Nakamura barked an order, and the armored humans formed a defensive circle around their unarmored companions. Weapon systems hummed to life, creating a palpable energy field in the narrow canyon. Krish launched himself at Nakamura. His ceremonial dagger aimed at a joint in the armor he had identified during his observations. But before he could connect, a shimmering barrier of energy materialized between them, deflecting his attack and sending painful vibrations up his arm. "Energy shields," Nakamura said calmly, as if explaining to a child. "Useful against projectiles and bladed weapons alike." Dara attacked from the side, her spear thrusting toward another human's less protected flank. But small, hovering drones deployed from the human's backpacks, intercepting her attack and firing painful stun pulses that sent her stumbling backward. The battle was brief and humiliating. Every Zarithian attack was countered by some technological defense: shields, drones, targeted sonic pulses that disrupted their coordination. Krish fought with increasing desperation, trying to find some weakness in the human's defenses, but each attempt was met with calm, efficient resistance. When Larn fell, temporarily paralyzed by some kind of energy discharge, Krish made the difficult decision to retreat. He signaled to his team, and they melted back into the jungle, leaving the humans standing unharmed in the canyon. As they regrouped at a safe distance, tending to Larn's gradually recovering body, the mood was somber. No one spoke of their defeat, but the implications hung heavily in the air. "Their technology," Morvek finally said, breaking the silence. "It's beyond anything our elders described." Krish clenched his fists, anger and humiliation burning inside him. "Technology is not strength," he insisted. "It's just tools. Without them, they are nothing." "But they have them," Dara pointed out, her usual bravado dimmed by their recent encounter. "And we do not?" "Then we must separate them from their precious tools," Krish declared. "I will infiltrate their main camp tonight, alone. Their leader, this Nakamura, seems to remove his armor when inside their secure perimeter. That's when he'll be vulnerable." His team exchanged concerned glances. "Alone?" Tazak questioned. "That's too dangerous." "Krish, one can move more silently than six," Krish replied firmly. "And I need you all to create a diversion on the far side of their camp. Draw their attention away while I slip inside." Reluctantly, his team agreed to the plan. As dusk fell, they moved into position around the human base. Krish watched from the undergrowth as the expedition members returned from their day's activities, passing through a secured perimeter marked by slender poles that emitted a faint humming sound. Some kind of detection system, he guessed. When darkness had fully descended, Dara and the others began their diversion, a series of controlled explosions using gathered resin from the volatile sunburst plants that grew in abundance. The resulting lights and sounds drew most of the human security forces to the northeast perimeter. Krish seized his opportunity, slipping toward the southwest edge of the camp where his observations had revealed a blind spot in their sensor coverage. Moving with the silence of a lifetime spent hunting in dense jungles, he approached the barrier. The detection poles presented a challenge, but Krish had prepared, using a technique learned from tribal hunters. He gathered mud rich in mineral deposits, known to disrupt energy fields, and smeared it across his exposed skin. Then, timing his movements between the periodic sweeps of the sensors, he slipped between two poles and into the human camp. Inside, the environment was jarringly artificial. Temporary structures made of materials unknown to Zarithian craft housed various equipment. Lights that burned without flame illuminated pathways between buildings. Krish kept to the shadows, his eyes adjusting quickly as he sought the central structure where Nakamura would likely be. He found it easily enough, larger than the others, with guards posted at the entrance. But Krish had not spent his life training in the jungle for nothing. He scaled an adjacent building with ease, leapt silently to the roof of his target, and located a ventilation opening large enough to accommodate his slender frame. The interior of the building was cool and dry, a sharp contrast to the humid jungle outside. Krish moved through the ventilation system, pausing occasionally to listen for voices or movement below. Eventually, he heard what he was seeking: Nakamura's distinctive tone, giving instructions to subordinates. Carefully removing a vent cover, Krish peered down into what appeared to be an armory. Racks of plasma steel armor components lined the walls, along with the energy weapons he had seen in action. And there, in the center of the room, stood Nakamura, now wearing only the black form-fitting undergarment Krish had glimpsed days earlier. Without his armor, the human looked smaller, more vulnerable, though still impressively muscled for his species. Krish watched as Nakamura inspected various armor components, occasionally making notes on a small handheld device. Krish's plan was simple: wait until Nakamura was alone, then drop from the ventilation shaft, subdue him quickly, and either kill him or take him hostage, depending on how the confrontation played out. He would then escape with whatever technology he could carry, proof of his victory over the humans' vaunted superiority. He didn't have to wait long. After issuing final instructions, Nakamura dismissed his subordinates, who filed out of the armory, leaving him alone with the equipment. Krish tensed, preparing to drop down, when Nakamura did something unexpected. "You can come out now," the human said calmly, without looking up from his work. "I've known you were there for the past 10 minutes. Krish froze, his mind racing. How could the human have detected him? He had made no sound, cast no shadow. "Your breathing pattern is distinctive," Nakamura continued, as if answering the unspoken question. "And your body temperature registers differently from humans on our thermal sensors. Plus, you left muddy handprints on the exterior wall. Creative attempt at sensor disruption, though I'll give you that." Realizing that surprise was lost, Krish made a split-second decision. He crashed down through the vent cover, landing in a combat-ready crouch before Nakamura, his ceremonial dagger held at the ready. "Impressive entrance," Nakamura commented, seemingly unconcerned by the armed Zarithian warrior in his armory. "Krish Tal of the Dragoon tribe, I presume. Your reputation precedes you." Krish narrowed his eyes, unsettled by the human's calm demeanor and knowledge of his identity. "You know nothing of me or my people." "On the contrary," Nakamura replied, setting down the armor component he had been examining. "We've studied the Zarithian tribes extensively before making contact. Your combat traditions are particularly fascinating, an elegant blend of instinctive reflex and codified technique." "You talk too much for someone about to die," Krish snarled, advancing slowly. Nakamura sighed. "I'd rather not fight you, Krish Tal. There's no need for conflict between our peoples. You invade our world, extract our resources, and speak of peace." Krish's grip tightened on his weapon. "Your words are as false as your strength, borrowed from machines rather than earned through blood and training." "A common misconception," Nakamura said. He gestured to the armor components surrounding them. "These are tools, extensions of our capabilities, not replacements for human strength or skill." Krish lunged forward, his patience exhausted. His blade arced toward Nakamura's exposed neck with deadly precision, only to be caught in the human's bare hand, inches from its target. Blood welled up around the blade where it cut into Nakamura's palm, but the human's grip remained firm. For a moment, they stood frozen in tableau, the Zarithian warrior with his weapon caught in the human's bleeding hand, their faces close enough that Krish could see the fine details of Nakamura's alien features. "Technology enhances what's already there," Nakamura said softly, his voice strained but controlled despite his injury. "It doesn't replace the human beneath." With a twist of his wrist, Nakamura disarmed Krish, sending the ceremonial dagger clattering across the floor. Then, with surprising speed and strength, he swept Krish's legs from under him, sending the Zarithian crashing to the floor. Before Krish could recover, Nakamura had retrieved a small weapon from a nearby table and fired a single shot. A pulse of energy struck Krish's leg, instantly numbing it from hip to toe. He tried to rise but found half his body unresponsive to his commands. Temporary neural disruptor, Nakamura explained, applying a small device to his bleeding palm that instantly sealed the wound. The effect will wear off in about an hour. Enough time for us to have a civilized conversation. Fury and humiliation burned through Krish. He had been defeated not once, but twice by this human. First with technology, and now in hand-to-hand combat. Everything he had been taught about his own superiority lay shattered around him, like the broken pieces of his confidence. "Kill me and be done with it," he spat. "I won't beg for mercy from an Earther." Nakamura shook his head and pulled up a chair, sitting down near the immobilized Zerithian. "No one's killing anyone today, as I said. I'd prefer we talk." "What is there to discuss with invaders?" Krish demanded, still struggling futilely against the effects of the neural disruptor. "Misconceptions, for a start," Nakamura replied. He reached for his armor chest piece and held it up. "You think this makes us weak, dependent on technology, rather than natural strength. But consider this. We developed these tools ourselves, adapted our environment to suit our needs rather than simply adapting to our environment." "That's not strength," Krish insisted. "That's fear. Fear of facing the world as you were born to face it. Is it fear to build shelter against the rain? To craft weapons for hunting? To develop medicine for healing?" Nakamura set the armor piece down and leaned forward. "Every species uses tools. Krishtal. We've simply taken that principle further than most." Krish turned his face away, unwilling to engage with the human's reasoning. But Nakamura continued, his voice level and thoughtful. "Your people have developed incredible natural adaptations to survive on Zerithia. Resistant skin, enhanced musculature, specialized respiratory systems. Our adaptations are technological rather than biological, but the principle is the same: survival through innovation." Despite himself, Krish found his anger being replaced by reluctant curiosity. "Why are you telling me this? Why not simply eliminate me as a threat?" "Because there's no need for us to be enemies," Nakamura replied simply. "Earth doesn't want conflict with the Zerithian tribes. We seek limited resource extraction rights in uninhabited territories, with fair compensation offered to the tribal councils." "Compensation?" Krish scoffed. "What could Earth offer that Zerithia needs?" Nakamura smiled slightly. "Medical technology, for one. We've observed the fungal disease affecting several coastal tribes, including some Dragoon settlements. Our xenobiologists have developed a treatment that could save hundreds of lives." Krish fell silent. The coastal sickness had indeed been ravaging some villages, with tribal healers powerless to stop its spread. If what Nakamura said was true. "Why should I believe you?" he finally asked, his voice less hostile than before. "You don't have to take my word for it," Nakamura replied. He stood and moved to a nearby communication panel. "I'm going to show you something, with your permission." Wary, but curious. Krish nodded. Nakamura spoke briefly into the panel, and minutes later, two more humans entered the room, supporting between them a Zerithian female who moved with obvious difficulty. Her azure skin was marred with the gray-white patches characteristic of the coastal sickness, and her breathing came in labored gasps. "This is Hana," Nakamura explained. "We found her near death 3 days ago while surveying the eastern acid rivers. She gave us permission to try our treatment." The female Zerithian looked at Krish with tired eyes. "They saved me," she said simply, in their native tongue. "I was preparing for the final journey when they found me. Now the gray patches recede each day, and my breath returns." Krish stared, his worldview shifting beneath him like unstable ground. The coastal sickness was considered a death sentence, yet here was living proof of the human's medical capabilities. As if sensing his thoughts, Nakamura spoke again. "Technology isn't inherently good or evil, Krishtal. It's a tool, like any other, defined by how it's used. We choose to use ours for exploration and healing when possible. The numbing effect in Krish's leg was beginning to fade, pins and needles replacing the dead weight. He sat up slowly, eyeing Nakamura with new consideration. "What happens now?" he asked. "That depends on you," Nakamura replied. He reached down and, in a gesture that shocked Krish to his core, returned the ceremonial dagger to its owner. "Hilt first. I'm choosing to trust that you're intelligent enough to see beyond tribal prejudices. Take this back to your people, not as a trophy of combat, but as a symbol of potential cooperation." Krish accepted the weapon hesitantly. "My team will be looking for me." "I know. That's why I've ordered my security forces not to engage them, despite their continued attempts to breach our perimeter." Nakamura smiled slightly. "Your friend Dara is particularly persistent." Krish couldn't help but return the smile. "She has always been determined." "A valuable trait," Nakamura acknowledged. He gestured to a side door. "You're free to go, Krishtal. That exit will lead you outside our security perimeter, where your team is currently hiding in the southeastern quadrant." Slowly, testing his recovering leg, Krish stood. He studied Nakamura for a long moment, seeing the human with new eyes. Without the imposing plasma steel armor, Nakamura was physically smaller than Krish, with none of the natural defenses of a Zerithian. Yet he had disarmed and defeated Krish, using only his bare hands and tactical thinking. "You could have killed me," Krish observed. "Yes," Nakamura agreed simply. "Why didn't you?" "Because death is easy, Krishtal. Peace is the greater challenge and the greater victory." With those words hanging in the air between them, Krish turned and limped toward the indicated exit. At the threshold, he paused and looked back at the human who had shattered and then rebuilt his understanding of strength. "This isn't over," he said, but the threat had gone from his voice, replaced by something closer to curiosity. Nakamura nodded. "I certainly hope not." Outside, Krish found his team exactly where Nakamura had said they would be, hiding among the dense foliage that surrounded the human base. Dara spotted him first, her expression transforming from tension to relief to confusion as she took in his disheveled appearance and unsteady gait. "What happened?" she demanded as he joined them in cover. "We thought they had captured or killed you." Krish sank down beside them, his mind still processing everything he had experienced. "I was captured," he admitted, "but not killed, as you can see." "They just let you go?" Morvek asked incredulously. "Why would they do that?" Krish looked back at the human installation, its lights glowing softly in the darkness. "I'm not entirely sure," he replied honestly. "But I think we may have misunderstood some things about these Earthers." Dara's expression hardened. "What did they do to you in there? You sound strange, Krish." "They showed me their leader without his armor," Krish said slowly. "And they showed me a Zerithian woman they saved from the coastal sickness, a cure our own healers couldn't provide." His team exchanged troubled glances. The coastal sickness had claimed many lives across the tribes, if the humans truly had a cure. "This changes nothing," Dara insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "They're still invaders, still taking what belongs to Zerithia." "Perhaps," Krish conceded. "But perhaps there's more to understand here than we initially thought." He struggled to his feet. "We should return to the tribe and report what we've learned. The council will decide our next steps." The journey back to the Dragoon settlement was slower than their outward trek, partly due to Krish's recovering leg, and partly due to the heavy silence that hung over the group. Each warrior was lost in thought, the certainties they had carried into this mission now clouded with doubt. As they approached the settlement, 3 days later, drums announced their return, and a crowd gathered to hear news of the Earth invaders. Tribal Chief Marandrav himself came forward to greet them, his imposing figure adorned with the traditional markings of leadership. "Welcome back, warriors," the chief intoned. "What news do you bring of the Earthers?" Krish stepped forward, aware of the expectations weighing on him. The tribe would expect tales of Zerithian superiority, perhaps even trophies taken from defeated enemies. What he had to share instead would not be well received. "Honored Chief," he began, choosing his words carefully. "We encountered the Earth expedition and observed their activities for several days. They possess technology beyond what our scouts previously reported. Energy shields, autonomous flying sentinels, weapons that can disable without killing." The chief's expression darkened. "And did you engage these invaders, as instructed?" Krish swallowed hard. "We did, Honored Chief, twice. And we were defeated both times." Gasps and murmurs spread through the gathered crowd. Defeat was not a concept easily accepted in Dravoon culture, especially not at the hands of supposedly inferior beings. "Explain," the chief demanded, his voice cold. So Krish did. He recounted both confrontations in detail, omitting nothing, not the humiliation of their failed ambush, nor his capture during the infiltration attempt. He described Nakamura without his armor, the unexpected strength and skill of the human in hand-to-hand combat. Finally, he spoke of Hana and the cure for the coastal sickness. As he finished his account, silence hung heavy over the gathering. Then, predictably, the outrage began. "Coward!" someone shouted from the crowd. "You speak the words of the enemy!" "He's been bewitched by their technology," another voice called. "Or worse, bought with promises." Dara, who had stood silently beside him throughout his report, now stepped forward. "I was there," she said, her voice cutting through the growing tumult. "What Krish says is true. The humans' technology overwhelmed our traditional tactics. And the woman Hana, I know her. She is from the coastal village of Rax, where my mother's kin dwell. If she lives when the coastal sickness had taken hold, this is significant." The chief raised his hand for silence, his expression unreadable. "Krishtal, you were sent to observe and, if necessary, fight the humans. Instead, you return with praise for their ways and doubt in your heart. How am I to interpret this?" Krish met the chief's gaze steadily. "I return with truth, Honored Chief. Not what we wish to hear, perhaps, but what we need to know if we are to deal with these humans effectively." "And what would you suggest we do with this truth?" the chief asked, a dangerous edge to his voice. Krish took a deep breath. What he was about to propose went against generations of Dravoon tradition, but after what he had witnessed, he could see no other path forward. "I suggest we consider the humans' offer of negotiation," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent gathering. "They seek access to uninhabited mineral fields, lands we do not use or need. In exchange, they offer medical knowledge that could save countless Zerithian lives." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, the chief began to laugh, a harsh, disbelieving sound that cut Krish to the bone. "Negotiation? With invaders who hide inside metal shells?" The chief shook his head. "Your father would be ashamed to hear such words from his son's mouth. Krishtal." The mention of his father, a legendary warrior who had died defending tribal lands from rival clans, struck Krish like a physical blow. But he held his ground. "My father taught me to protect our people above all else," he replied. "Sometimes protection means fighting. Sometimes it means finding new paths forward." The chief studied him for a long moment, then turned to the gathered tribe members. "The council will deliberate on this matter. Until then, the Earth expedition is to be considered hostile. No Dravoon warrior is to approach their camp without direct orders." He fixed Krish with a stern gaze. "As for you, Krishtal, you will remain within the settlement until the council decides whether your actions constitute wisdom or treachery." With that, the chief turned and strode away, followed by the tribal elders who formed the council. The crowd dispersed slowly, many casting suspicious or disappointed glances at Krish as they departed. Only Dara remained at his side. That could have gone worse, she offered with a grim attempt at humor. Krish sighed, the weight of recent events settling heavily on his shoulders. The chief didn't order my execution, so I suppose that's something. He wouldn't dare. You're still the most promising warrior of our generation, Dara replied. Then, more softly, but Krish, are you certain about this? About the humans? I'm certain that what I saw challenges everything we've been taught about them, he said carefully. And I'm certain that if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. Dara looked troubled. The tribe will never accept cooperation with outsiders. It goes against everything we believe. Beliefs can change, Krish said, though he wondered if he truly believed his own words. They must change when new truths present themselves. Over the next 3 days, Krish remained confined to the settlement as ordered. The council deliberated in closed sessions, occasionally summoning him for further questioning about the humans and their capabilities. He answered truthfully each time, despite knowing that his honesty did little to endear him to the tribal leadership. On the morning of the 4th day, as Krish was performing solitary training exercises to work the lingering stiffness from his injured leg, a commotion at the settlement's edge drew his attention. Warriors were rushing to defensive positions, weapons raised. Breaking his confinement without hesitation, Krish sprinted toward the disturbance. What he found stopped him in his tracks. Standing just beyond the settlement's boundary markers was Nakamura, alone and unarmored, his hands raised in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. Behind him, at a respectful distance, stood 3 other humans, similarly unarmored, but carrying what appeared to be medical containers. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Chief Marindrav, who had emerged from the council lodge at the commotion. Nakamura addressed the chief directly, speaking in carefully practiced Zarithian. "Honored Chief of the Dragoon, I come in peace to offer assistance. We have received reports of 3 new cases of the coastal sickness in your settlement. We bring medicine that can cure this affliction." The chief's expression darkened with suspicion. "How do you know of these cases? We have told no outsiders. Our aerial surveys detected the specific heat signature pattern associated with the disease," Nakamura explained. "We've been monitoring all settlements in the region for outbreaks since developing the treatment." Krish stepped forward, unable to remain silent. "It's true. Honored Chief, I saw a woman named Hana who was cured of the late stages of the sickness." The chief shot him a warning glance. "You were ordered to remain within your dwelling, Krish Tal." "With respect, Honored Chief, this is too important for protocol," Krish replied, bowing his head slightly to soften the defiance of his words. A tense silence fell over the scene. Then, from the back of the gathering crowd, an elderly female Zarithian pushed her way forward. Krish recognized her as Elder Zith, the tribe's most experienced healer. "Let them speak," she said, her voice cracking with age but still commanding respect. "3 of our children lie dying of the gray sickness. If these humans truly have a cure, only a fool would turn it away out of pride." The chief hesitated, clearly torn between traditional suspicion of outsiders and the desperate need of his people. Finally, he nodded curtly. "The healer and 1 assistant may enter to examine our sick. The others will remain here under guard." Nakamura bowed deeply in the Zarithian manner. "Thank you, Honored Chief. Dr. Sarah Chen will attend to your sick, along with her assistant." He gestured to a small, determined-looking human female who stepped forward, carrying several containers. As the human healer and her assistant were escorted to the medical lodge, Krish approached Nakamura, ignoring the disapproving looks from his tribespeople. "Why did you come?" he asked quietly. "You must have known the risk." Nakamura's expression was serious. "Because sometimes you have to demonstrate good faith rather than just talking about it. Words are easy. Actions require courage." Krish studied the human's face, searching for deception and finding none. You came unarmed into what you must know is hostile territory. A slight smile touched Nakamura's lips. Not entirely unarmed, just not obviously armed. He patted a small device at his belt. But I came hoping not to need this. A summoning beacon for your armored troops? Krish guessed. Actually, it's a personal shield generator, Nakamura corrected. Defense, not offense. I'm trying to make a point here. Despite himself, Krish felt a reluctant respect growing for this human who willingly placed himself in danger to help people who had tried to kill him days earlier. It contradicted everything he had been taught about the selfish, exploitative nature of Earthers. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the direction of the medical lodge. The human doctor, Chen, had emerged and was speaking urgently to Chief Marindrav. Her expression was serious, but hopeful. The treatment has begun, she was saying as Krish and Nakamura approached. The children are responding well, but they'll need continued care for the next few days. With your permission, I'd like to train your tribal healers in the administration of the medicine. The chief looked torn, ancient prejudice warring with pragmatic need. And what do you ask in return for this? Generosity, he demanded, suspicion evident in his tone. Dr. Chen looked genuinely surprised by the question. This is not a transaction, Chief Marindrav. These children are sick, and we can help them. That's all. The chief's eyes narrowed. All humans want something. Your leader has spoken of mineral rights. Nakamura stepped forward. Resource agreements are a separate matter. Chief Marindrav, the medical assistance is offered freely, regardless of any future negotiations. A murmur ran through the gathered Zerithians. Such a concept was foreign to their tribal culture, where every gift created an obligation, every assistance demanded reciprocity. Elder Zith emerged from the medical lodge, her ancient face betraying rare emotion. The human healer speaks truth, she announced. Already the gray patches recede on the youngest child. This medicine is a miracle I have not seen in all my years. The tension in the air shifted perceptibly. Several tribal members moved closer, curiosity replacing hostility in their expressions. Seeing this, the chief made a decision. The human healers may remain to complete their treatment and train our own in its use, he declared. As for future discussions of resources and territories, he glanced at Krish, then back to Nakamura. The council will consider your proposals once our children are healed. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. Krish caught Nakamura's eye and saw understanding there. The human recognized this small victory for what it was, the first crack in a wall of separation centuries in the making. Over the next several days, an uneasy truce settled over the Dragoon settlement. The human medical team continued their treatment of the sick children, all of whom showed remarkable improvement. Elder Zith and her apprentices worked closely with Dr. Chen, learning the preparation and application of the medicine with an eagerness that surprised many in the tribe. Krish found himself in an unexpected role as intermediary between humans and Zerithians. His confinement order tacitly lifted. He spent hours each day with Nakamura, learning about Earth culture and technology while sharing insights about Zerithian traditions and survival techniques. Your people have adapted remarkably well to this harsh environment, Nakamura commented one evening as they sat near the settlement's edge, watching Zerithia's moons rise over the jungle canopy. Biologically and culturally, Krish nodded. Zerithia shapes us. Those who cannot adapt do not survive to pass on their bloodlines. Natural selection at its most direct, Nakamura agreed. Humans faced similar pressures on Earth, but we responded differently, developing tools and technologies to modify our environment rather than waiting for our biology to catch up. Is that why you created the plasma steel armor? Krish asked, genuinely curious now, rather than contemptuous. To adapt to environments your bodies cannot naturally endure. Partly, Nakamura replied. But also for protection in conflict situations. Human history is complicated. We've fought many wars amongst ourselves. Krish considered this. As have the tribes of Zarithia. Perhaps we are not so different after all. Nakamura smiled. That's often the case when different species meet. Initial assumptions of fundamental difference give way to recognition of universal constants. Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Dara. Her expression troubled. The council has reached a decision, she announced. They will meet with the human representatives tomorrow at midday to discuss terms. Krish felt relief wash over him. That's good news, isn't it? Dara's frown deepened. Perhaps. But not all council members support this path. Elder Vrex and his followers argue that any cooperation with outsiders weakens the tribe. Vrex has always been conservative, Krish noted. But surely the healing of our children has demonstrated the potential benefits? Some see benefits, Dara replied grimly. Others see dependence. Be careful, Krish. Your advocacy for the humans has not been forgotten or forgiven by all. After she had gone, Nakamura turned to Krish with concern. Will this endanger you? Krish shrugged, affecting a nonchalance he didn't entirely feel. Tribal politics have always been dangerous, but the fact that a meeting will occur at all is progress. I hope it's worth the risk you're taking, Nakamura said quietly. As do I, Krish replied, his eyes on the rising moons. As do I. The council meeting the next day was held in the tribal gathering circle, an open space at the center of the settlement, where important decisions had been made for generations. The human delegation, Nakamura, Dr. Chen, and 2 others, sat on one side, facing the semicircle of tribal elders. Krish and other warriors stood around the perimeter, both as security and witnesses to the historic discussion. Chief Marin Drav opened the proceedings with traditional formality. We gather to hear the words of the Earth people, who come seeking access to Zarithian resources. Let them speak their desires openly, that the council may judge their worth. Nakamura stood, his posture respectful but not subservient. Honored Council of the Dragoon tribe, we thank you for this opportunity. Earth seeks limited extraction rights for specific minerals found in the uninhabited Eastern Territories, particularly in the region known as the Burning Plains. Elder Vrex, a battle-scarred veteran with hardened views, spoke up immediately. Those lands may be uninhabited, but they belong to all Zarithia. What gives Earth the right to take what is not theirs? We do not seek to take, but to trade, Nakamura clarified. In exchange for access to these resources, we offer medical knowledge, as you have already seen demonstrated, as well as other technologies that may benefit your people. Such as? Prompted another elder, her tone more curious than hostile. Water purification systems that could make the acid rivers safe for drinking and irrigation. Energy generators that harness Zarithia's abundant geothermal activity. Communication devices to connect distant tribal settlements. Nakamura gestured to his colleagues, who displayed holographic images of the technologies he described. Murmurs of interest spread through the watching crowd. Even Elder Vrex seemed momentarily silenced by the potential benefits being offered. Chief Marin Drav raised a hand for silence. These offerings are significant. However, there remains the question of trust. How can we be certain that Earth's presence will remain limited to the agreed-upon territories? That your people will not encroach further once established? A fair concern, Nakamura acknowledged. We propose a joint oversight committee, with equal representation from Earth and the Dragoon tribe, to monitor all extraction activities. Additionally, we are prepared to sign a formal treaty with explicit boundaries and conditions, enforceable under both Earth and Zarithian law. The discussion continued for hours, delving into specifics of territory, compensation, and safeguards. Throughout, Krish observed the changing expressions of his tribespeople, initial skepticism gradually giving way to cautious interest as the potential benefits became clearer. Not all were convinced. Of course. Elder Vrex and his supporters remained vocally opposed, warning of dependency and cultural corruption. But even they could not deny the reality of the healed children, now playing outside the medical lodge without a trace of the gray sickness that had nearly claimed their lives. As the meeting drew to a close, Chief Marandrav called for a traditional period of reflection before the final decision would be announced. The human delegation withdrew to guest quarters, while the council members dispersed to consider all they had heard. Krish found himself approached by the chief as the gathering circle emptied. "Walk with me, young Tal," the elder Zerithian commanded. They moved in silence through the settlement, eventually reaching a high point that overlooked both the tribal lands and, in the far distance, the glittering lights of the human base camp. "You have advocated strongly for cooperation with these Earthers," the chief said at last. "Your words have swayed some on the council, despite your youth." Krish chose his response carefully. "I speak only what I have observed, honored chief. The humans possess knowledge and technology that could benefit our people greatly, and they have shown good faith by healing our sick without demanding immediate concessions. Yet you once believed, as most still do, that reliance on technology represents weakness," the chief pointed out. "What changed your mind so completely?" Krish considered the question, searching for words to express the transformation in his thinking. "I saw beneath their armor," he said finally. "I expected to find weakness, soft creatures dependent on machines for strength. Instead, I found humans who use technology as we use our tribal knowledge, not as a replacement for personal strength, but as an enhancement of it." The chief nodded slowly. "And you believe their intentions toward Zerithia are truly peaceful?" "I believe they could have conquered us already if that was their goal," Krish replied honestly. "Their weapons far outmatch our traditional arms, yet they seek negotiation instead of domination." "A compelling point," the chief acknowledged. He was silent for a long moment, gazing out over the landscape. The council remains divided. Much rests on tomorrow's final deliberations. As darkness fell, an unexpected commotion erupted near the settlement's edge. Krish and the chief hurried toward the disturbance to find a group of warriors led by Elder Vrex confronting Nakamura, who stood alone outside the guest quarters. "What is happening here?" the chief demanded, his authority bringing an immediate hush to the angry voices. Elder Vrex turned, his expression fierce. "This Earther was caught attempting to send signals to his base camp, in violation of council restrictions." All eyes turned to Nakamura, who remained calm despite the ring of hostile warriors surrounding him. "I was reporting to my superiors about today's discussions," he explained, "as agreed in the preliminary terms." "You were calling for reinforcements," Vrex accused, "preparing to take by force what we might not give willingly." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Krish could see younger warriors gripping their weapons, eager for any excuse to attack the human who represented everything they had been taught to fear and resent. "This can be easily verified," Krish interjected, stepping between Nakamura and the advancing warriors. "The human communications device can be examined to confirm the content of the transmission." Elder Vrex sneered. "And who among us can read their alien technology? This is precisely why they cannot be trusted." "I can," came a quiet voice from the edge of the gathering. All turned to see Dr. Chen approaching, her medical case in hand. "I can access the communication log and translate it for all to hear." The chief considered this offer, then nodded. "Do so." Under the watchful eyes of the assembled Zerithians, Dr. Chen accessed Nakamura's communication device and displayed its contents as audio in the Zerithian language. The message was exactly as Nakamura had claimed, a status report on the negotiations, with no mention of reinforcements or military action. Elder Vrex was not satisfied. They could have coded messages hidden within the ordinary words. Enough! The chief's voice cut through the tension like a blade. These accusations without evidence dishonor the Dragoon tradition of fair judgment. He turned to Nakamura. You will restrict further communications until after tomorrow's decision, to prevent any similar misunderstandings. Nakamura bowed in agreement. As you wish, Chief Marandrav. As the crowd dispersed, Krish remained behind, troubled by the incident. Elder Vrex will not give up so easily, he warned Nakamura quietly. He and his supporters see cooperation with Earth as a betrayal of Zerithian values. Change is never easy, Nakamura acknowledged, especially when it challenges deeply held beliefs. Be vigilant tonight, Krish advised. I would not put it past some of the younger warriors to attempt something foolish to impress Vrex. Nakamura nodded his thanks for the warning. You've come a long way from wanting to kill me yourself, Krish Tal. Krish's amber-red eyes met the human's brown ones. I've seen beneath the armor, he said simply. Both yours and my own. That night, Krish's prediction proved accurate. Shortly after midnight, he was awakened by Dara, her expression urgent. Vrex and his followers plan to attack the human quarters, she whispered. They believe eliminating the Earth delegation will end the threat of corruption once and for all. Without hesitation, Krish grabbed his weapons and followed Dara through the sleeping settlement. They arrived at the guest quarters, just as a group of 6 warriors, led by Vrex's son Maltak, were preparing to breach the entrance. Stop! Krish commanded, positioning himself between the warriors and their target. This action violates tribal law and the chief's direct orders. Maltak sneered. Stand aside, Krish Tal. Your sympathy for the Earthers is well known. Some even call you traitor for it. I am no traitor, Krish replied evenly. I serve the Dragoon tribe by preventing you from starting a war we cannot win. We are Zerithian warriors, Maltak spat. We fear no enemy, no matter their weapons. Courage without wisdom is merely recklessness, Dara interjected, coming to stand beside Krish. The council has not yet decided. Would you usurp their authority with this attack? The confrontation might have escalated further had the door to the guest quarters not opened at that moment, revealing Nakamura standing calmly in the entrance. Unlike the Zerithians, who wore only light sleeping garments, the human was fully dressed and appeared completely alert. Is there a problem? He asked mildly, as if finding armed warriors outside his door in the middle of the night was a common occurrence. Maltak growled and raised his weapon, but Krish moved faster, disarming the younger warrior with a swift, precise strike. There is no problem, he told Nakamura, while maintaining a warning gaze on Maltak. A misunderstanding that is now resolved. For a tense moment, it seemed Maltak might ignore the implicit warning and attack anyway. Then, with a final glare at both Krish and Nakamura, he signaled to his companions, and they melted away into the darkness. You should secure your quarters, Krish advised Nakamura once the others had gone. I cannot guarantee they won't try again. Nakamura nodded. Thank you for the intervention. It seems we both have those who resist change among our ranks. Change is difficult, Krish acknowledged, echoing Nakamura's earlier words, but sometimes necessary. As dawn broke over the settlement the next day, the tension was palpable. The council reconvened for final deliberations, while the rest of the tribe waited anxiously for their decision. Krish found himself the object of conflicting reactions. Some tribespeople offered gestures of support for his moderate stance, while others made signs to ward off betrayal as he passed. By midday, the council emerged from their chamber. The tribe gathered in the central circle as Chief Marandrav prepared to announce their decision. The human delegation stood respectfully to one side, their expressions carefully neutral. After much deliberation, the chief began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. The council has reached a decision regarding the Earth proposal. We have weighed the potential benefits against the risks, tradition against necessity, Pride against pragmatism. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled tribe members, before settling on the human delegation. The Dragoon tribe will accept the proposed agreement for limited resource extraction rights in the Eastern Territories, under the conditions of joint oversight and technological exchange as discussed. This decision is made not from weakness, but from strength. The strength to recognize opportunity and the courage to embrace change when it serves our people. A mixture of reactions rippled through the crowd: relief, disappointment, uncertainty. Elder Vrex and his supporters stood stone-faced, their displeasure evident but contained for now. Furthermore, the chief continued, in recognition of the role he has played in facilitating this historic agreement, Krish Tal is appointed as the Dragoon representative to the Joint Oversight Committee. His understanding of both our traditions and the humans' capabilities makes him uniquely suited to this responsibility. Krish felt a surge of conflicting emotions: pride at the recognition, uncertainty about the path ahead, and a strange sense of rightness, as if pieces of a complex puzzle were finally falling into place. The formal ceremony that followed was brief by tribal standards, but laden with significance. Representatives of both species signed the agreement: humans with electronic devices, Zerithians with traditional blood marks pressed into specially prepared bark parchment. As the ceremony concluded, Nakamura approached Krish, extending his hand in the human gesture of partnership. "Your courage made this possible," he said quietly. "Standing between two worlds is never easy, but it's often where the most important work is done." Krish clasped the offered hand, feeling the strange smoothness of human skin against his own textured palm. "I still have much to learn about your people," he admitted. "As we have much to learn about yours," Nakamura replied. "That's what makes this agreement so valuable, not just the resources or technology, but the knowledge exchange." Later that evening, as the settlement celebrated with traditional feasting and the humans observed with respectful interest, Krish found a moment of solitude on the same overlook where he had spoken with the chief the previous day. The lights of the human base were visible in the distance, no longer seeming like an alien intrusion, but rather a new feature in a changing landscape. He was not surprised when Dara joined him, her familiar presence a comfort amid so much transformation. They stood in companionable silence for a time, watching the 3 moons of Zarithia rise one after another. "You've changed, Krish," she said finally. "A week ago, you would have led the charge against the human camp yourself." Krish nodded, not denying it. "I've seen beneath the armor," he replied, "both theirs and my own." "What do you mean?" she asked, turning to study his profile in the moonlight. "I always believed strength came from what we are, our physical capabilities, our natural adaptations to this world. I looked down on the humans for relying on technology instead of developing those natural strengths." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But I was wearing armor too, the armor of certainty, of unquestioned beliefs passed down through generations. It made me strong in some ways, but blind in others." Dara considered this. "And now I understand that true strength isn't about what protects you, whether that's plasma steel or tribal certainty. It's about what you do when that protection is stripped away." Krish turned to face his friend. "The humans chose to heal our sick when they could have conquered us. They chose negotiation when they could have used force. That's a different kind of strength than what we've been taught to value, but no less real." Dara was silent for a long moment. "Not everyone will accept this new path," she finally said. "Vrex and his followers still see only betrayal and weakness in cooperation." "Change takes time," Krish acknowledged. "Perhaps some never will accept it, but for the sake of our people's future, enough must." The next morning, as preparations began for the establishment of the Joint Oversight Committee, Krish sought out Nakamura one last time before the human returned to his base. He found the Earth officer supervising the loading of medical supplies. a gift to the tribal healers to continue treatment of any future cases of the coastal sickness. Major Nakamura, Krish called, using the human's formal title for perhaps the first time. Nakamura turned, smiling as he recognized the Zerithian. Krish Tal, or should I address you as Representative Tal now? Krish made a dismissive gesture. Titles matter less than actions. A philosophy we share, Nakamura noted. For a moment, Krish struggled to find the right words for what he wanted to express. Finally, he simply asked, "Why did you do it? When you had me captured? Why show me mercy instead of eliminating a threat?" Nakamura considered the question seriously. Because in that moment, I saw not an enemy, but a potential ally. Someone whose courage and intelligence could bridge our differences better than any treaty. You took a significant risk, Krish pointed out. I could have rejected your offer, returned to my people with nothing but renewed hatred. True strength includes the willingness to take necessary risks. Nakamura replied, Something I suspect you understand well. Krish nodded, then extended his arm in the traditional Zerithian warrior's gesture of respect, forearm to forearm, a position that in ancient times would have made both parties equally vulnerable to a blade strike. Nakamura recognized the significance and completed the gesture without hesitation. His human arm pressed against Krish's azure one in a symbol of mutual trust. The greatest victory, Krish said, echoing Nakamura's earlier words, is not defeating enemies, but turning them into friends. Nakamura smiled. I couldn't have said it better myself. As they stood together on the edge of the settlement, human and Zerithian, the rising sun cast long shadows behind them, not separate, but intermingling on the ground they shared. Above them, an Earth transport ship prepared for departure, its engines humming with the same energy that powered the armor Krish had once despised. He watched it rise, no longer seeing it as a symbol of alien intrusion, but rather as a bridge between worlds, much like the unexpected friendship that had formed between himself and the human who had shown him what lay beneath the armor of technology and tradition alike. The true strength of any species, Krish now understood, lay not in their physical capabilities or technological advancement, but in their capacity to recognize worth beyond their differences and build something greater together than either could achieve alone. And that, perhaps, was the most important lesson of all.